Good evening, and thank you for your patience. Call to order the meeting of the Board of Managers of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District on December 15th, 2016. All managers are present except Manager Olson and Manager Miller. Is there any member of the public who wishes to address the board on a matter that's not on our agenda or that's on our consent agenda? No hands. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. I'm going to change the order of 11.1 and 11.2 for the sake of members of the public who are here. Any other changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Manager Shackleton moved and Manager Becker seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There's an information item noted in the agenda. It is the Highway 101 Shoreline and Jennings Bay Floodplain Mitigation Construction Update. On the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes of December 8th, approval of the check registers for the general checking account, the surety account, and the 325 Blake Road checking account with November and October reports. And we also have item 7.1, which is resolution 16-083A, authorization of cost share funding for 2016 fall non-homeowner projects. Item 7.2, which is resolution 16-087, authorization to enter into a contract with KC Consulting for the 50th anniversary. I would like to pull the minutes and move that to 11.3. With that change, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. By way of President's report, I want to say that I've attended a number of the watershed meetings the last week or two, and I wanted to thank particularly Managers Becker and Rogness and Miller for attending so many of them. There have been great discussions and participation from the community members who were there, and really excellent meetings. Earlier this week, together with Mr. Whisker and Mr. Erdahl and Ms. Brown, I attended the Carver County Board meeting and the work session where Mr. Whisker presented, and I'll leave details of that for the Administrator's report. I did note, though, that they had their legislative agenda read off that morning. There are 11 items, and some of them are water and parks related. One was they want to get extra funding for wetland road replacement programs, and then quite a number of parks and recs ideas, and a metro government reform agenda item. There will be an executive committee meeting scheduled next week to discuss strategic framework and possibly some legislative items. And the last thing I'll say is that the CAC attendance assignments will be prepared by Mr. Lochner and given to us. And we'll just keep the same rotation rolling forward, which means I have January. So I hope it's warm that night. That's all I have. Manager Miller, Manager Shackleton, do you want to give a report from the PPC meeting? Planning and Policy.
It was a great meeting. We discussed, let me just pull up the agenda real quick. We had a robust discussion on the direction that the education communication departments would go. Came to a consensus on, where is it? Here we go. Came to consensus on how our cost shares would be leveraged, our cost share grants would leverage, and it was a really productive meeting. I think all of us were there except for Manager Blixt, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. The upcoming meeting and event schedule is printed in the agenda. We have no public hearings or presentations this evening, so the next item is 10.1, permit 16-618 for 8 Spur Road, Edina, Miss Sylvia.
President White, Board of Managers. Tonight, permit 16618 is before you. It is for the reconstruction of a single-family home located at 8 Spur Road in Edina. It triggers the district's erosion control and wetland protection rules. Because wetland protection was triggered, a public notice was sent out, and a member of the public did request that this was heard by the Board of Managers. The concerns were mostly related to disturbance on site and how overall it would impact the surrounding water resources. So the presentation outline, first I'll go over the project location, the project details, rules that are triggered, how the applicant proposes to meet those rules, and staff's recommendation. Project is located within the city of Edina in the Minnehaha Creek minor subwatershed, as shown above. A look at the existing conditions. It is currently a single-family home located on a 0.9 acre parcel, and currently there is 7,361 square feet of impervious surface. The proposed plan is to reconfigure the house and the driveway and also increase the impervious cover by 815 square feet. Now, the district does not regulate stormwater management for single-family home construction, but I will touch briefly on how water works on the site. And so the red line you see on the diagram is an approximate delineation of the subwatershed boundary. North of the red line drains to the street, which I'll be able to show in a clearer picture next. It drains to the street and then is caught by catch basins by the city's storm sewer. And then on the south side of the red line, drainage flows overland to an adjacent wetland pond downstream. And so the project does not propose to alter this drainage pattern. It just mostly is changing impervious on which side of the line. And so here's a better picture from Edina's water resources map. The front of the house, again, goes to Spur Road and is caught by the catch basins downstream. The back of the house goes to the wetland, and then that wetland continues further north to another one, which is then conveyed via pipe to the Meadowbrook Wetland Complex. And kind of zooming out a little bit, the minor subwatershed that the wetland is located in receives drainage from approximately 30 acres conveyed via storm sewer, and those catch basins are indicated as like the black and white dots. And so further from, I can show you. This subwatershed comes to this basin, and then this one collects along here and is directed via this storm sewer, which outlets here, and then the pond continues north this way.
Is that just overland flow, or is it piped?
Piped.
North towards?
Mm-hmm. Oh no, I'm sorry. Overland flow north from one wetland to the next. So it would be
From number 10 to number
yes,
21?
yeah, 10 to 21. That's overland flow.
Is the old streetcar line, does that function as a, does this function as a dike, or is that, do you have it?
Manager
Mr. Mann.
Singleton, it is a low berm, there aren't any culverts through there, but water moves through it.
Okay, thank you.
And so the project does trigger the district's erosion control rule. The district regulates excavation over 50 cubic yards, and the project does propose a total of 1,450 cubic yards of excavation, of which 750 will be just taken off site. The remainder, 700 cubic yards, will be used to fill in the footprint of the old house and also do some grading for the new driveway, building pad, and also extension of backyard elevations. The applicant has provided an erosion control plan that meets the district's requirements, and you can see the perimeter control is silt fence, which is outlined in blue, and that also delineates the construction limits of the project. Tree protection is highlighted in yellow. Those trees are to remain on the property. And then also concrete washout and rock construction entrance have been provided as well. The wetland protection rule, the buffer provision of the wetland protection rule is triggered for new principal residential structures that increase the imperviousness of the site. And so because this is exactly that project, the buffer rule is triggered, and so a 25-foot buffer is required for this project, which is highlighted in green. The buffer line is denoted by the purple buffer wetland monuments. And so the whole shaded area in green will be the protected buffer, which will be declared to the property.
So I'm looking at Google Maps, and where does the wetland start? The question I'm really asking is, does the wetland start at where the cattails start, or is it where the cattails end, or is it?
So I have a better picture for you. This is from the Hennepin County Natural Resources map, and the layer that's turned on is wetlands. And right now, the wetland data that the county is using is the National Wetland Inventory. And so this shaded purple, I guess it's coming up as purple, is at the 890 contour, and I think follows that vegetation line that you're asking about. And so the wetland boundary was set off of the 892 contour.
The 25-foot buffer extends up inland from the purple.
From 892.
Yes. Which is 2 feet off of the buffer. Thank you.
Yeah. And so as the buffer was provided on the site plan, and the declaration will be submitted showing the buffer and the wetland monuments, it satisfies the wetland protection rule. And so in summary, the proposed project satisfies the district's erosion control and wetland protection requirements, and staff recommends approval contingent on submitted declaration, recorded declaration, and also reimbursement of the mailing fees.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anyone here from the public who wishes to speak to the board concerning this permit? No hands. Is Mr. Lowe?
The applicant?
Is the applicant here?
Yeah, I'm Gary Kramer, I'm the builder. Rick Storleen is the architect on this project. This is Sarah, along with her husband Noel. They're the homeowners. They've lived there and they're going to be living there.
Is there anything you'd like to add to the report? Thank you.
No, I think everything's pretty standard. I've been building homes for a long time, and my first time I've come to one of your meetings, so.
Glad to hear that. Is there a motion to approve the permit?
So moved.
Manager Becker moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Manager Blixt. Any discussion or further questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move to 11.2, Resolution 16-083B, authorization of cost share funding for Standish Erickson Alley retrofit. Ms. Mamayev.
President White, managers, this RBA references a cost share project that was brought to the board last week as part of the non-homeowner fall funding round for 2016. The board requested additional information prior to considering funding for this project, and so we have the applicant here tonight. Laura Hurley is with Metro Blooms, and Rich Harrison is also with Metro Blooms, a designer there, and we also have some of the homeowners here in the audience as well tonight. So we will be presenting that information that was requested. So just to refresh your memory, the non-homeowner grant process is a spring and a fall deadline, and there's $250,000 available for each of these deadlines. There are two categories of grants that are considered under this category of non-homeowner. It's green infrastructure, which has a water quality focus, and community engagement, which has an outreach focus. They're both BMP projects, but they each have a different focus to them. This project is somewhat unique. It doesn't neatly fit into either of these categories. However, staff felt that it had tremendous value and brought it forward. So there is, you know, a unique opportunity here, and therefore the need for additional information and discussion. So this project, as all the other projects for the fall deadline, went through an extensive review process, including a review by staff, Wenck Associates, and a CAC subcommittee. It went to the CAC on November 9th, and a recommendation was made to approve funding. And then the Board of Managers was presented with the recommendation last week, and we're back this week with more information. The cost share budget for 2016 is $600,000. The amount approved to date is $314,968.41. This includes the funding that was approved last week and finalized today on the consent agenda. So the available balance as of this moment is $285,031.59. The requested funding for this project is $40,000. Staff had recommended $30,000 in funding to the CAC. Upon consideration, the CAC increased that recommendation to $40,000, which we brought forward to the board last week. Last night, the CAC met and discussed this project at length, reconsidered its recommendation, and is now recommending a $20,000 funding limit for this project. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura and Rich to walk through the project and provide the additional details that were requested.
Thank you for having us at your meeting. We're happy to provide more details. So this is a map of the Lake Hiawatha catchment area in South Minneapolis. You can see the alleyway that we're talking about is in green there. That's within the Lake Hiawatha catchment and within the bigger Minnehaha Creek watershed. These are just some photos of the alleyway. You can see it's definitely in disrepair. You can see on that yellow garage in the second picture where there's extensive flooding. It goes, you know, at least a foot up the garage in large rain events. Some additional photos of the site in the summertime. Rich was actually took these photos. I think in particular, you know, you can see some sediment build up on at the bottom of the alleyway there. There's a lot of sediment coming down this alleyway as well as runoff. So we got a couple homeowner testimonials. I know that one of the concerns with this project is the water quality benefit. So I believe the homeowner that supplied this is here. We have water pooling in our garage, the corner next to and under the side door. It's been 2 to 3 inches deep at times and sits for prolonged periods and freezes in the winter. So that's one of the homeowners that actually owns the alleyway. 3836 22nd is on the east side of the alleyway. I'm just going to jump to this picture so you have some reference. So the east side, the homeowners there do not actually own the alleyway, but it's where the overflow of the alleyway goes to the northeast. So this homeowner is. Do you have the pointer? I was going to.
Oh, we don't have it.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work
Yeah,
with
you're
it
going to
either.
have to physically point. Sorry.
So this homeowner right here, Rich spoke with him earlier this summer just about the overflow, and he stated, you know, anytime it's raining heavily, you know, they get water flooding in their entire backyard from their garage back. I think the bigger picture from these testimonials is that there's a lot of water coming down this alleyway. It's a large alley shed. There's a lot of water. that's overflowing the alleyway. And right now, you know, it goes into these backyards and then it overflows out to the street. So Rich is gonna walk through this graphic and some of the details of the project a little bit more.
Right. So thank you again for allowing us to be part of this process. This is my first time here as well, and it's really exciting, I must say, to be here to talk to you all about this, the work that I'm so passionate about. So the construction documents that you all may have seen before did not show where the catch basins are on 22nd Avenue, which is the north-south street to the east. And so I expanded this view a little bit to show exactly where those are. And that would be where the receiving water, you know, or where the ultimate overflow would be in a large rain event. So this diagram shows the land use, you know, the land cover of the study area and the alley shed, and identifying all the impervious surfaces, rooftops, sidewalks, alley itself, separating from connected surfaces that drain directly to the alley and disconnected. This is important because we use these numbers in WindSlam. It's a modeling software that we use quite often at Metro Blooms to try and calculate runoff and also pollutant load of this water. So that's what we're showing here. We've got some numbers, but one important one, the impervious area that is in this alley shed is 52.1%. Which is a little bit lower than your average alley in Minneapolis, but I will address that in a little bit. So we can come back to this if we want to talk about the site itself. So these are the construction documents that we actually put together. One thing to note that there is some slope coming down from 39th Street down to the garage at the end in the middle of the block. And this actually presented a good opportunity to do monitoring, because when they do it in a controlled environment, you would have an under drain pipe that they would collect the water, and that's not the case here. We don't have that. So with the slope, we can actually put a trench drain in the center of the alley and then daylight that again into the alley. And this is just a way to capture that runoff before we install the pavers, because we will be monitoring the volume of water coming down this alley for 1 full year, and then installing the pavers, and then monitoring again afterwards. We'll talk about that in the further slides. Just details of the product itself and the cross section that actually shows that slope. So the water quality benefits of this, it does capture 11,168 gallons of runoff according to our modeling. Okay, and that's from the 19,143 square foot of impervious surfaces, again 52%. Our model shows that that'll remove 0.9 pounds of phosphorus per year. It alleviates local flooding issues, which the photographs and testimonials talk about, and the overflow ultimately drains the catch basins on 22nd Avenue. Just to back up a little bit, to understand how this could be potentially applied to other projects in the future, an average Minneapolis block, based on other studies that we've done in the Nokomis watershed, 60% of property is drained to an alley, and 56% of that is impervious. That would generate 52,000 gallons of runoff in a 1 1/4 inch and 24-hour rain event. And then it's just really important also to note that driveways that are directly connected to an alley contain the highest levels of pollutants on a property. And so those are the real critical ones we really want to try and capture. So, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just a follow-up question. Most alleys, most municipal alleys drain to a storm pipe. So they capture the storm water and it does actually enter the pipe shed.
Yes.
Where does this drain to?
So let's back up to the aerial, the next one, yes. So, right, so this particular alley drains to, and this alley is about 1/3 of the distance of a block.
Yeah.
Okay?
Just look at Google Maps.
Oh, your Google Maps. He has a resource that none of us have. Yeah, that's good. So it does drain to the center of the block.
Yeah.
And if you look at the contours on that map, those are 2-foot contour intervals. So that, it just lends me to make an educated guess that the catch basins are about 2 feet below or lower than where the overflow by the corner of the garage is. What is happening in between there, it's hard to say. We know that, again, that when it rains hard, it overflows into that yard and potentially going into those catch basins, especially in very large rain events. So, but that's correct. Back to a general city block, alleys drain to the street. It's very rare that there's a catch basin in the alley itself. It does happen sometimes. And then it usually goes to the nearest corner, right into the system.
And I think one point about, you know, we're sharing this average Minneapolis block information because, you know, we recognize this is a very unique alleyway in Minneapolis. But a strong benefit of this project is that we're hoping to influence public policy. And so being able to influence public policy and hopefully get these implemented in public alleyways, this is the kind of benefit that we're looking at when we're talking about implementing this kind of practice in a public alleyway. Being able to capture 60% of the runoff from those properties by doing this in a public alleyway it's a big impact.
Can I follow up? Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm looking Google Maps again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the catchments are on the roadside of the curb.
Yes.
And for the water to get to the catchment basins, it has to kind of sheet flow across turf grass.
Yep.
Yes and no, to the driveways themselves, and then most likely through the driveways out to the street.
Mr. Meehan?
Manager Sheckleton, manager. So Telly made me slum it out here and go in the cold. So what I went is I looked at, and just as Rich is pointing out, water. You know, I looked at the snow. You can tell water goes overland flow and flows through their backyards and through their driveways is where I'm thinking, you know, based on what I can see out there. It flows through there, and these catch basins are, and I checked on topo elevations, they're 2.5 feet below this low spot right here. So what my estimation is that you have it holds a little bit of water with this low spot over here, and then bigger events, it pops up and then moves through these backyards out into the street to the driveways that they have, and then I also think that it gets in between these houses right here too. There's a low spot where they've got an alleyway there too. So based on what I could see on Field Realcon, that's kind of the logic makes sense of where they building.
So I mean, okay. I mean, my real question is this an apple-to-apple comparison? I mean, I like the concept of doing retrofit on an alley and saying, okay, there's a direct correlation to a measurable water quality benefit. But if there's sheet flow across turf grass, I've got to believe there's a little bit of filtration that's happening, and before it hits either of the two driveways. And so
So the monitoring that's taking place though is in the alleyway, so it's happening before, you know, any of it, you know, sheet flowing over the.
Yeah. So the point of the monitoring is really to give us some proof as to the effectiveness of this new technology. And you know, we know that permeable pavers infiltrate stormwater, which has a direct correlation to improving water quality. We know that as a fact. I remember going out to the site initially and talking to Brett and to Paul Shelson from the city of Minneapolis and Andy Erickson from the University of Minnesota and St. Anthony Lab, and we all met out there and we're looking at it and like, gosh, can't we just tip this thing going to the street? It would be so wonderful if we could do it that way. Well, that's not the case. And we were encouraged to still pursue this project based on research and understanding how effective these systems are. And I'm going to talk to that in the further slides in a little bit about monitoring. But that was a big part of why we have put so much energy into developing this project. We know that the water, yes, it does infiltrate a little bit through the I always tell people in my presentations that the green concrete only infiltrates, you know, the first quarter inch of rain. Of course, that's dependent on what types of subsoils you have and how flat it is, right? Yep. But generally speaking, you know, if we could plant a native prairie back in that area, that'd be great too.
that would increase the infiltration on site. So, yeah. Does that answer your questions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I was also gonna ask a question of infiltration on the slope of that scale.
Yeah.
I mean, and we've done pervious pavers and flat parking lots and,
Mhm. So-
and so.
So, and with that, that's a very good question, because the slopes up here are 6 to 8% in the steepest spots. And I've always questioned the effectiveness of permeable pavements on steep grades. And there's been studies in Toronto, extensive studies that will say that they are effective up to 10% even, which is surprising. You would think it wouldn't work, it would overflow the tops of them and go on. But when you've got a contiguous permeable pavement system, like a parking lot or like an alley, and not having, well, alley has sources of concentrated flow. We're getting technical, I'm not supposed to get too technical, but if you want to hear it.
We delve in the technical, because I was about to ask you if there's a crown in that alley or if it's inverted.
Yeah, it's a typical Minneapolis, right, currently it is.
But this isn't a municipal one, because the municipal.
It is not, it's a privatized alley.
But, and so it's inverted, or is
It's,
it a crown?
it's inverted, but very, very subtly. It's not like your typical Minneapolis alley that has such a V cross-section, inverted V. So if you have a contiguous permeable system, it's constantly infiltrating throughout its entire, the sheet flow. So it's not like, if you just have strips along there, water will gain momentum and overshoot it probably on steep surfaces. So we're confident that it's going to be very effective on the grade that you're talking about. Okay, continue.
Thank you for
Yes.
allowing me the digression.
Yes, no problem. So monitoring data, we plan to do, again, the pre and post monitoring in 2007 before paver installation, 2018 the year after. Getting these systems in the ground as early as we possibly can, so that we have a good full year of data. We want to monitor precipitation, which there will be a tip bucket rain gauge data logger on site, which will measure volume over time, so that gives us intensity, real time, and then also having the volume runoff that flows to that alley, that midpoint. And that'll also be in real time flow data, the pressure transducer and the trench drain. And then our staff would go out and collect that data every 2 weeks. So this is really important data that gives this project some validity and furthers our argument to install these more in other places. Results will be reported to the City of Minneapolis Public Works staff, also City Council members and county staff. Currently, the City of Minneapolis concerns to this project, or any permeable pavers, is their effectiveness and the maintenance part of it. And that's something we can address later as well, if you wanted to talk about that. This data will add to the body of knowledge gathered by the scientific community on paver outcomes. This is really, really critical. Okay, next. And then also added benefits is this is a very innovative system in Minneapolis. It's never been done before. In the alleyway itself, we've had a lot of people that are like, why can't we put pavers in the alley? Because our other projects collect stormwater on people's private property right before. It's also a unique opportunity to work in the alleyway and gather data to address, city, county, watershed districts questions. I had a really wonderful conversation again with Andy Erickson, who has helped me through the research part of this all the way through. And I have some quotes from him that he said today. To my knowledge, a study like this demonstrates the effectiveness this technology has not been done in Minnesota. Other studies from different regions of the county may or may not be applicable. A lot of studies on permeable pavement are done in the South. How does that translate to our wonderful climate here, right? So the value in this project is that it's a small local site with well-defined boundaries. It's very quantifiable with all the drainage area details, and is ideal for collecting accurate data for this type of technology. And then finally, this data can be used for future rulemaking, TMDLs, water quality planning, and long-term throughout the district and beyond. So that's the real value of this project.
Just to run through some outreach, we're planning on putting some signage up for pedestrian traffic. I think the bigger value is sharing these results publicly. We'll be creating a page on Metro Bloom's website and making sure that all of the people that we work with know that that page is there, and we'll be updating that regularly, likely every 2 weeks when we're just collecting the monitoring data to kind of share in real time with our stakeholders, what's happening in the alleyway, how this is working, and engaging them in that process. We'll be sharing it through social media as well. Rich is excellent at taking photos and posting on Facebook, so I have no doubt there'll be lots of that, and sharing it through e-blasts and in our newsletter. We'll definitely do a public tour upon completion. I anticipate that there will be more of these in the future. We're not going to do one and that'll be it, but as people are interested, we'll do them in the future as well. And then sharing the data, like Rich was saying, this is really important. Monitoring data and sharing that with all of our Blue Thumb partners. Metro Blooms is the administrator of the Blue Thumb program, and sharing that with them and presenting it to them. Sharing it with academia, the University of Minnesota. They're again a big part of the monitoring project. Stormwater professionals and contractors and governmental organizations. Again, this is a great source of data for all of those communities. And then maintenance, the homeowners, they all know that they're going to have to sign a maintenance agreement. They're all committed to maintaining the project. This is something we can discuss in more detail as well if you all have questions about that. And then this is the budget breakdown. One thing I wanted to point out here, the alleyway is owned by 5 properties on the west side of the alleyway. The cost share is being split among 4 of those properties, not all 5. One of the properties isn't able to contribute financially to the project, and so their neighbors have taken on their share because they really believe in this project. And so that $18,000 that they're putting towards the project is just split among the 4 of them. A number of them are here, and they can certainly speak to how much they're willing to contribute if there's questions about that as well. And then the bids, the installation of the monitoring system and the paved drain system, we put out to bid this fall and got bids back from 3 contractors. One of them was much higher than the others. We've narrowed it down to either J.L. Tice or Blackstone, both of whom Paved Drain recommended, and we've worked with J.L. Tice extensively on other projects as well.
And to wrap up, this is a copy of the evaluation sheet. It's an evaluation sheet that we use for all of our projects. This is the community engagement form that emphasizes outreach, but also does assess the project design and water quality benefit. And for a score of 82 out of 100, it was really among the highest scoring projects for this round, mostly because of the benefit of the monitoring data, the fact that we don't have this type of data currently. The district has funded previous Blooming Alleys projects with Metro Blooms, and this will allow us to find accurate data of the outcomes of these types of BMPs in alleys and affect policy change that could really make a difference in treating the stormwater that enters the storm drains in Minneapolis and other cities. So we really felt that this was a very valuable project. And so back on November 1st, the staff and the CAC subcommittee met and recommended 75% of the requested funding, $40,000, not to exceed $30,000. When the CAC met on the 9th of November to consider that recommendation, they increased it to $40,000 to match Hennepin County's commitment of $40,000. And then last night, the CAC met and reconsidered following last week's board meeting and has revised the recommendation to 20% of the total project cost, not to exceed $20,000. So the RBA that's before you tonight is the original recommendation from the CAC of $40,000. So you have that for consideration tonight.
Before I ask for a motion, are there further questions? Manager Shackleton?
So in the city mound, we did a parking lot, and there were some contractors coming in, it was next to a ball field. Contractors coming in to take care of the ball field and, put the sand for the ball field on the parking lot, drove away to get other stuff, and, sand in a pervious paver situation just goes in,
Yeah. Yeah.
making it no longer a pervious paver.
Yeah.
And if we have not all, but most of the property owners along this private alley that have agreed to maintenance, what happens if one of them moves?
That's a good question.
So I
I mean,
think,
with the city of Mound, we forced the city of Mound to go in and fix it.
so Michael Welch, our counsel, can speak to that as far as the maintenance agreements that all the homeowners sign.
We've, managers and Manager Shackleton, we've structured these to balance simplicity and ease of administration for the district against securing the maintenance. So in the past, we've had multi-property owner projects with Metro Blooms. We've made Metro Blooms go get the maintenance agreements, and we provide a template of the maintenance agreement, then they have to go out and get them. Our usual term there is that if the homeowners move and don't fulfill the requirements, that the district has the contractual right to reimbursement of money in an equivalent amount. That's just kind of the mechanism we've used as our sort of default, but if the managers have specific direction or concern, we can incorporate that into an agreement that might apply. This is a little bit different than those, because in those cases, the homeowners solely had the facility on their property, so their obligation was, there's a lot of hesitation to have a recorded declaration, so what their obligation was that they had to tell us and put us in touch, put the district in touch with the new incoming people. That was the obligation. How you would enforce that, and it's not meant to be a real arm's length,
I mean,
hardcore.
I'm just envisioning, I have a, between my front door and my garage, I have a slope. It's about this long, and it's just angled enough that I fall almost every first freeze, and so I throw down a little bit of salt, not salt, but dog safe salt, which is a chloride, and a little bit of sand. And given the grades that I've seen on this, what's the education process going to be so that a future owner doesn't start throwing down sand and just clog up what we would help pay for?
Yeah, so I think one, and maybe the homeowners can attest to this, but one strength of this project actually, in that it's not just an individual homeowner, is that it's a whole block of homeowners, and they're all gonna be putting in a lot of money into this project. And so I think if a new homeowner comes in, I mean, yes, we will reach out and provide education about it, but I would anticipate that the neighbors would also be putting pressure on their neighbor to help maintain it in a way that's going to ensure its function. I know that one of the homeowners does want to say something quickly, if that's okay, all of you. Lori, if you want to.
Also, I thought, just in terms of the analogy with the mound project, that was a pervious pavement, not pavers, in the ballpark there. So it's a little bit different in terms of its maintenance issues too, as opposed to some of the pavers.
But my real point was, it was a unit of government with whom we had a contractually binding agreement. We put a lot of money in. It was meant to infiltrate, much like this was, and we had an unexpected outcome that was was enforceable to protect our investment.
Would you begin by saying your name and your address?
Yes, my name's Lori Fewer. I'm at 3853 21st Avenue South. I'll try and address that a little bit. I wasn't prepared for that one, but I started in on this project about 2 years ago when I met Laura at a festival in the neighborhood and had prior to that time, become aware that we did have a private alley, which I think none of us were aware of until some new homeowners, a couple other households are here with me tonight. So Laura and I started talking over 2 years ago, and it's really been a persistent process that we've been going through that with building excitement. And I must say, with this presentation, I feel more excited tonight because I feel like this is really a project that's bigger than ourselves. And I think that's something that we've all been excited about in this. And, you know, over the last couple of years, I think back a year and a half ago, meeting with Rich in our alley with a group of about 5 or 6 people, one from this organization, someone from the University of Minnesota, someone from Hennepin County, and really the excitement and enthusiasm about this unique alley, which I believe is the only privately owned alley in Minneapolis to my knowledge. There's more.
There, yeah.
I think there's a few.
Okay, so still somewhat of a unique situation to 1 or 2 or 3
It is.
of
It's unique.
hundreds. So we have felt excited about being able to contribute to this kind of environmental and research focus, and also excited about creating some beauty in our alley with not only this, but gardens and things like that. And it's been a process of numerous community meetings with our households. I've gone to our board meeting of our neighborhood council. Just a lot of work and persistence and building enthusiasm from your organization and all the others of how exciting this is. And so I think we feel real excited about that. I think I've lived in this house for 24 years, so when you talk about what about moving, well, certainly that happens. I think the more the neighbors that these folks have bought houses from had been there for a lot longer than I had. So there's a lot of longevity in the neighborhood, but I guess I can't speak to the next neighbors, but I think we're all very committed to making this work and to that education process. So I must say that we are putting money into it, and I think it's a stretch for all of us. And so we feel excited about the research and the, you know, what this is creating, as I said, bigger than ourselves. But as we're putting more money in and the cost of concrete might be cheaper than what we are putting in, I don't know how much more we can do than what's been budgeted. So I think that's just a big thing that we're going to have to think about. But I would hope that the money is there to support what Hennepin County has committed to us as well. So anyway, we're excited and more excited as we hear more. Yeah, but thank you for considering it.
Does anyone else want to speak? I have a question, which is, will the project go forward if this is funded only at $20,000 or $30,000?
Again, I think that's a question for the homeowners, because they would have to come up with that additional cost share.
I think that as the budget has come forward and the different grants that have come, or the other grant that's come through, I think we have already put forth some money, and I think that right now the budget is more than we had anticipated a couple years ago. I think going forward, I look at my neighbors here, I don't know how much more we can do. So I'm not sure that it would, quite honestly.
Other questions? Mr. Welch?
Just for Manager Shackleton and for the completeness of sake, the mechanism that the district uses for maintenance issues on permits is a declaration on private property that gets recorded. Generally, the homeowner, the cost share program has shied away from those until the district gets into a fairly substantial contribution of funding. In the north of $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on a single property, then there's been a recorded declaration. But just in terms of your question, Manager Shackleton, it's a mechanism that can be used. Then it's there, whether somebody moves or not. It's an obligation that runs with the land is the legal term. So it doesn't matter who lives there. Whoever owns the property takes that obligation on. It's a big deal. It's it's a lot to do.
That's with the recorded declaration, but not here. Correct.
I didn't remember to ask for a CAC report. I know that you, Manager Robbins, were at the CAC meeting last night. So I wanted to ask you and Ms. Mamayak what the thinking was or the discussion that caused them to adjust their recommendation downward.
I think that's a little hard to sum up in a few words, because we spent a fair amount of time discussing this, and we pretty much had several options that we considered, and there were subsequent votes, and those votes gave the most support to reducing the amount of money to $20,000. And characterizing that, I think that the CAC was really very much divided when they decided to approve or recommend to the board to the $40,000 level. And I guess they recognized that. And Telly, I don't know if you disagree with that or not, but.
Well, I have to say that the CAC last night, when they reconsidered it and took that vote, did not have the information that you have before you tonight. They did not have the benefit of the additional information that Laura and Rich have provided about the maintenance as well as the research component, as well as the water quality value of the project with the overflow and the capture of the overflow. So the questions and the comments really circulated around the validity of the research, the maintenance required, and the water quality benefit. And but then there, on the plus side, there were comments about this is more information than we typically get about our projects. The group doing the testing is reputable, credible, St. Anthony Falls Lab at the U. And there's great respect among the CAC for the evaluation process that staff has created for these projects. And this was among the highest scoring.
Thank you. Mr. Earl.
Thank you, President White and managers. I was also at the CAC meeting last night, and I think it's the slide that's up there right now. I think initially, the staff recommendation had been at the 30,000 level. The CAC, one of the members, and they voted on it to actually increase that to the 40,000, and then they took a couple different votes last night again. And one of the things is more of a kind of a process on their side of things. They've talked about, when there is a lot of their votes are unanimous, and that's kind of clear consensus then. But they did talk about having going forward to kind of note the vote difference in some of the kind of primary questions going forward. And I think, as Telly just mentioned, their big questions, I think, were whether water stayed on the property or flows off the property, which I think, and Mr. Meehan was at the CAC meeting last night also, so he could provide that kind of from the engineering perspective, that it does indeed flow off the property, doesn't just stay on the property, which was one of their initial concerns. And then also kind of they had a question about the validity of the research, because what if there's a year of drought the following year and all those different types of things. And I think some of those were some individual questions about research methodology, but at the same time they expressed a high level of confidence in the lab at St. Anthony to be able to kind of adjust and qualify and make arrangements with those numbers too. So just as
How did they land on 20,000?
It was somewhat arbitrary. I think they kind of somebody just threw out a motion and they voted on it. And then they voted on 30,000 after that, and I think that was a close vote, but I think it failed by one vote or something. So they kind of had a few different votes on different things.
Manager Robbins.
I've sat in on probably about an hour and a half discussion on this subject, and I actually feel very supportive of the effort. I think that it's an interesting opportunity that we haven't really tried before. And I would be in favor of it being funded to the original level,
30,000?
40,000.
Thank you, Manager Blixt.
I guess my question is, given that the alleyway is private property, I'm just wondering, what is the possible homeowner benefit in terms of increased property value that may be acquired as a part of the, the benefit of having this work done? And is there a way to quantify that in that, so that we aren't, a public entity subsidizing that benefit to the homeowner? They are contributing to the project, and so the question is, are they contributing, that we aren't enhancing their property value?
Just a question, I don't have an answer, but just a question. Have we evaluated that for other cost share projects, a lot of which are on private properties that have, over the last several years?
I would agree with that line. I would much rather focus on the water quality benefits that could be derived or wouldn't necessarily be derived, or whether this is actually a valid comparison. I was about to ask, looking at Street View again, there's a concrete alleyway across the street, and this is bituminous, and it's in markedly different shape, but it looks to be about the same ballpark age, and doing an apples to apples comparison is not feasible. You don't have snowplows going down this driveway. You do have snowplows going down city alleys in Minneapolis, and the volume of traffic is going to be markedly different. For some reason, I thought we, at once upon a time, put money into an alley, and I wasn't sure if it was down south and west of Nokomis, or if it was over up in Kenwood. I thought we did something.
In the alley itself?
For blooming alleys.
It was just a blooming piece?
Private property on the side.
Okay, I don't know why I thought we did.
Well, I have an observation about the question of valuation. When we put in our vegetative buffer along the lake shore, I was worried that the assessor would say it was worth less, because it might be an impediment to selling, and it was zero, no change whatsoever.
Big benefits to the lake.
Absolutely.
And just to go back to the reason that I thought of it, I understand we've done this in the past, but usually the homeowner pays 50% of the cost. And in this case, they're nowhere near 50% of the cost. So that's what I'm, thinking, well, surely, perhaps there's an increase in value. Because I just not sure. And wondering if that would help ease the pain of charging the homeowners additional funds to, make this go forward.
If I might speak.
Susan Mack.
President White, Manager Blix, managers. That is for traditional cost share projects, so this is
Right.
why we're in this, murky area right now, because it doesn't neatly fit into green infrastructure or community engagement. There's that research component, so you have, expensive monitoring equipment, and that you wouldn't have it with just a pervious paver alley if you're just putting it in as a BMP and not having that research component. You might not even choose that particular type of paver, you might do something else. So that's why this is so difficult, and was difficult for the CAC as well, because it is so unique and is such a unique opportunity and doesn't really fit the mold of the typical projects that we fund. So that's a consideration too, that the burden on the homeowner is a little different in this case, because it's not a traditional cost share project.
Remind me, when you're reporting out and communicating your results to a lot of agencies, is something going to come back to us?
Yes.
We'll have all the results of your research. Yeah.
And I know that, all of the local governments we work with, Hennepin County and Minnehaha Creek Watershed District and the city, have all question with those Blooming Alley projects, you know, what is the effectiveness of this? And I know that Hennepin County and the Watershed District have had questions about why we can't do this in the alleyway. And again, it's a unique opportunity to actually do that and to answer questions about effectiveness.
Mr. Welch?
Just briefly, managers, because to answer the question, this one is unique. I agree with Telly, and it's a good question that Manager Blix raises, and one that we've discussed with cost share staff in designing the program before they come to the managers. The public purposes doctrine is the constitutional doctrine that we are kind of relentless with staff on building that into. The managers have the discretion to say, we see enough public benefit here to justify the costs. So there's no bright line, there's no formula you can apply. You're the beholders here, and you make that judgment. But we design it into the program so that it gets considered. It gets considered more with this one because, as Telly said, it presents a unique set of factors.
Manager Robbins?
I'm reluctant to offer this, but there are 2 property owners in that block that would be real beneficiaries of this program, and they're not participating. And that's an unfairness sort of flag for me. They have water sheet draining across their properties, and that's a pretty disagreeable situation. And they're not part of the solution, which I think is regrettable.
Do you mean on the upslope side or the downslope side?
North, right?
Downhill.
Downhill.
North, yeah.
That's downhill.
Yeah, on the east side of the alleyway.
Yeah, it's these properties that I think it's regrettable that they're not at the table.
Well, it's apparent that if we, unless you have other sources of grant funding for this, but it's apparent that if we approve anything less than 40,000, it kills the project. Meaningless, maybe I want to say. The city won't give you any money.
The city will not, no, the city will not pay for projects on private property.
Are we ready to make a motion anymore? Manager Blix?
Well, I was going to offer a motion to make the amount in the RBA, I was going to say 32. Just because there are 4 homeowners, and then it would increase their cost by $2,000 apiece. Just as a trial balloon.
Okay, so you haven't made a motion yet, you're just trying out the idea?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
What's the proposed reduction of flow? I'm really getting to your point about the receiving properties. I mean, this looks like an application for a new, to rebuild a driveway.
Yes, it is. I mean, it's the alley, to rebuild the alley.
Sorry,
And it would reduce it with that water quality volume of 1 1/4 inch in 24 hours. It would capture 100%, according to our models. And again, you know, the exciting part of this is to understand rainfall intensity and effectiveness. We don't have that information, and that's something that is extremely valuable. So we can determine at what point, you know, as it starts to rain harder, get more intense and whatnot, we'll be able to tell how much it's not capturing, and that has a lot of value too.
Did you mention the permeability of the substrate earlier? I thought you did.
We have not, but it is in the report, the initial application, I believe. And I took samples down 4 feet at 3 different locations.
Sure.
And they're on the actual document if you want to see exactly where it's. Am I going the wrong way? I am. Let's see. I got that. No, I can barely see them. So, sample 1, sample 2, sample 3. And the bottom 2 were sandy loam, and the upper one was actually a little bit of heavier clay. Not heavy clay, but more. Now, whenever we do projects in alleys, we always check with the city of Minneapolis first. We look at their sewer profiles, which is kind of general information, but you know, city of Minneapolis, every single street has a profile that has a storm sewer and a sanitary sewer. And you can get that data to look at what the substrate, there's fill there, and it's just like clay, sand, gravel. It's very basic information, but it's still good information. So we believe that this substrate is fairly, permeable. It's not sand, it's sandy loam.
I think that we should ask ourselves whether this project is valuable, whether it has public purpose. And then if it does, we should give it the 40,000. I think that argument about money, or the debate about money, I shouldn't say argument, is really a surrogate for the major question, which is, do we see enough benefit from this project that we want to help fund it? I'll make a motion that we approve this, the resolution as written with the $40,000 amount.
Second?
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
3-2. Okay. That's a close one, kind of like the CAC, but it passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
That's an incentive, right? Item 11.1. Ms. Fellows, Resolution 16084, Cynthia Creek Grant Awards. Ms. Fellows, Mr. Lochner.
Good evening, Board of Managers. We were here last week and presented on the purpose of Cynthia Creek Grant Program. A few of those past projects where funds have been going the last few years, and requested funding for 15 of those. Upon the questions posed by the board, we then provided you this week with an explanation of each level of funding being recommended for each project in a memo. The memo should give you insight into the thorough discussions of each project, why each level of funding is being recommended, and towards which activities within those proposals. So again, we had 16 proposals requesting a total of $194,035, with just a budget of $100,000 available. And we are asking approval and final action of $98,200 to fund 15 projects at the levels shown above.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, it was a tie.
It's all right.
We'll give it to Manager Blixt.
She's closer to me, so I heard her.
Okay. Sound. Is there a discussion or questions concerning any of these? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
The next item is the December 8th minutes, and I asked them to be pulled because I wanted to make a couple of changes. At line 49, I wanted to add Manager Miller's name. I had thanked Rognus Miller and Becker for attending sub-watershed meetings. At line 83, Manager Blixt arrived at 6:50, not 7:50. And as long as I'm on a roll here, just a typo, the spell check problem at line 419, it says previous instead of pervious.
And line 420.
Ah, I like that, thank you. What?
I caught him.
Oh, okay. So I would make a motion to approve the minutes with those changes.
So moved.
Second.
Second from Manager Blixt. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item 12.2, the comprehensive plan status update, Ms. Christopher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, managers. I wanted to provide kind of one last update as I prepare to hand things off to my fellow planners in anticipation of maternity leave in a couple weeks. I think we're at a pretty good break point that will hopefully make for a smooth transition. Mike Heyman will be taking over as kind of project manager for the comprehensive plan. So in terms of tracking all the tasks, the consultant work, schedule, and then kind of specific tasks will be led by others within that. He'll kind of just make sure everything's staying on track. So I'll walk through just a few of the kind of major tasks or buckets of work that are left and the status of each. One is the sub-watershed meetings with the communities and lake associations and other groups where we've been, which are mainly intended to hear about kind of their priorities and plans and opportunities for us to work together, so that can be incorporated into our comprehensive plan. And those I think have been going quite well. We've had good attendance, and the groups have been coming pretty well prepared, where we're getting a lot of good information from them that we will just need to synthesize and incorporate then into the sub-watershed plans. So those are almost wrapped up. We've got our last one on Monday, so hopefully I'll be around to kind of see the end of that. And then another kind of outreach piece, something that we've offered to the cities is to come and do council presentations kind of in the first quarter of the year as we have some new council members coming on board. And I think Renee Clark will be helping to kind of organize those and arrange for that. Then, of course, the major task left is to kind of finish the drafting and review of the plan. And different sections are in various stages right now. We've got drafts for some, outlines for others. And Matt Cook will be leading kind of the drafting effort along with the sections that Smith Partners and Wenk are doing. And then we'll have kind of an internal team as well as Smith Partners doing review of the draft materials. And then there are a few specific sections that we plan to bring to the PPC that are more kind of policy discussions that we want to have kind of first quarter of the year. One is kind of the sub-watershed plan outlines, which will be essentially, it will outline kind of the water resource issues and priorities. Then we'll have kind of the built environment piece, incorporating the information we're getting from our communities in terms of their plans, priorities, and kind of those opportunity zones where we can be working together. And then from kind of looking at those two sections, we'll then kind of outline what the management strategies are and how we intend to deploy our resources across our various programs. And so we want to kind of frame those out and bring those to the committee to review and make sure we're kind of in agreement in terms of the priorities for each area. Another section that we'll be bringing to discuss with the committee is the LGU responsibilities section, local government unit section, which we've discussed previously is really more of a coordination framework so for how we will kind of integrate water and land use planning on an ongoing basis. So not just kind of a one-time thing that we're doing for the plan, but really how do we create a framework to keep doing this throughout the plan cycle. And then I think the third main topic that we want to bring and discuss with committee is kind of the funding structure. So in terms of the CIP and land conservation, how are we kind of assigning those funding caps and at what level of detail so that we're kind of balancing the need for some specificity to meet state requirements and to have transparency while also having the flexibility that we're seeking to kind of be more opportunistic. So we've got some different kind of options and ideas and want to bring a recommendation to discuss with the committee on that. And then kind of the last main piece is the strategic planning process, which we just wrapped up kind of program reviews this evening with the PPC. And in January, and James will be kind of taking the lead on this, we'll be bringing kind of the review of program purpose, priorities, and resource allocation more at the organizational level, so kind of bringing all the pieces together and working to develop with a PPC kind of a package of recommendations that would then be brought to the full board. And so that'll be, I think, a good break point where we'll have kind of the information at the level that we need to inform the plan in terms of program descriptions and how everything's aligned. And from there we'll get into more of the HR planning and other kind of operational matters. So those are kind of the main elements and kind of where they stand and how they'll move forward in the first quarter of the year. And I think, you know, we've got a plan to get it done, but it'll be kind of pushing the limits of our department capacity that's already pretty stretched, but they tell me they're comfortable, that we're in a good spot, so. So I don't know, I think James maybe wanted to just say a few words about kind of the capacity
That's her story,
issue.
she's sticking to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I did want to take just a few minutes to speak to the transition plan. We don't have anything to present tonight in terms of sort of a concrete handoff and instilling confidence in the board and how we're going to get everything done that's currently on our plates, but I am confident we'll be able to work through it while she's on maternity leave, and obviously it's a temporary thing. But I wanted to use it as an opportunity as well to kind of weave in another data point and reminder of the workload balance issues that we talked about through strategic planning. We outlined at that point in time that over time we've taken on more and more and more and not necessarily resourced up, and we're sort of, I feel like we're a department that's sort of currently under strain, and this is going to, as Becky mentioned, I think really pushes to our limits in the next 90 days because we also have somebody else that's out on maternity leave and several significant initiatives brewing that are going to need attention first quarter next year, and what Becky's dropping isn't insignificant. They're all significant organizational priorities that we cannot just set aside. So, you know, just to recap, our groups worked on absorbing some of the land conservation without the additional staff, permitting without considering the additional workload impacts, and we started to evolve into some of the organizational planning that we discussed with the committee, whether it's strategic planning or helping the board and administrators set organizational priorities, budget and finance. We're working through some of the human resources stuff right now, and we heard plans from EdCom just earlier this evening about moving forward and potentially relocating a portion of their cost share funds towards planning. And so that's just to say that we're already stretched pretty thin. I think we're getting it all done. We'll address that during the operational discussions for strategic planning. So we want to be patient and do that in a methodical way, not rush to judgments there. And I'm confident, again, that we'll be able to execute all the stuff that Becky's teed up because she's just done a phenomenal job getting us to where we are on the comprehensive plan and strategic plan. I mean, we've hit every single major milestone that she outlined for the comprehensive plan, with the community supporting us along the way, knock on wood. And again, with the strategic plan, we've hit all of the milestones, and she's leaving us in a good spot in December. But the comprehensive plan itself, the next steps for the strategic plan, and then looking at first quarter financial budget planning, those aren't things that we can just wait for her to get back on. So she mentioned Mike and I are going to be taking the lead on all of those things and working together, and we'll be able to work through it. But just as a reminder, in first quarter next year, we need to start thinking about planning how we're going to be executing those FEMA dollars that we got for damages along Minnehaha Creek. So we're working on a pretty significant partnership document with the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the city of Minneapolis right now that we hope to be bringing back through all the agencies in the first quarter. And we were just awarded Clean Water Legacy funds to help us plan the execution of those dollars. We'll probably be contracting some of that work out by necessity, and once Tiffany comes back, although we promised her she wouldn't have to walk back into a project, I think she's going to be the PM for that because there's nowhere else it could probably land. Mike will be finishing up some Japs Olson work that you guys were previewing just recently in the spring, so that's going to be on his docket. We're making progress on Meadowbrook. We've got a meeting with Superintendent Miller in January. We're revisiting a financial plan with Michael Schroeder, And it looks like that in first quarter, if there's decisions made by the park board, could be a project that we might be able to see some movement on, which would require us to ramp up in 17. And of course, we have cold storage, which is in a pivotal year in 2017 in terms of refinancing, getting it ready for RFQ later in the year, seeking demolition funds. Those are things that are going to take a lot of Mike and my time. And we're also ramping up to finish the 6 Mile section of our plan, which we're just in front of the Carver County Board talking about and getting financing approvals there. So we're not short of work. It's really fun. I'm confident that we can get it done. And our groups, I just wanted to remind the board, our groups asked me to keep informing you that they've asked me to seek balance as sort of a priority for them in the coming 18 to 24 months. So I think we're going to have to address some of these issues in real time, and I just wanted to flag for the board. As we jockey all of these priorities, I want to make sure that we keep the lines of communication open, that if you have questions about how things are getting done, you can ask, and we'll be giving you information about what we can do and can't do as we juggle all these priorities that are competing for our time. And I also wanted to give Becky a pat on the back and just say I think we're very comfortable, Mike and I, with where we left with the consultants and the specific work tasks that have yet to be done. The sub-watershed meetings have been going really well. The cities have really enjoyed them. They've shown up and not been lectured on the technical details of modeling and watershed science. They're there to download their priorities, their needs, their initiatives, and we're going to weave those into the watershed science and come up with, I think, a pretty leading edge plan. And that's a good break point for us to start drafting here in first quarter of 17. So I wanted to say thank you.
Thanks.
Kudos, because it has been a terrific process, and on a personal level, next time we see you, it will be a long time from now. So best wishes.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I might add that Mrs. Christopher has been a gracious host in these morning meetings and a fine leader who has made it clear why people are at the meeting and what's expected of them. You've done a great job.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. The board retreat was not given a date in the planning, so it seems to me that some of the dates might be Saturday, the 28th of January, or the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evenings following, which are the 30th to the 2nd. We're accustomed to spending Thursday evenings, so the 2nd might be a logical date. But I'd like a little feedback from people about their schedules and how they feel about that date. Manager Blast.
What are we doing at the retreat? What's the
Well, the
purpose
agenda
of the retreat?
the agenda is being developed, and as you know, under the committee plan we have, the idea was to have a retreat early and late in the year. I know that we'll be talking about governance and committee structure, and the rest of the agenda items are being still put together. I have agenda planning meeting with staff on Wednesday morning. Maybe 3 hours, not a long retreat.
So there's the other Thursday that would also be available.
The 2nd, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that would be my preference.
I'm open.
Well, let's schedule for the 2nd then, Thursday the 2nd. Maybe 6 to 9 with dinner at 5:30 or something like that. And we'll look for a location. Thanks.
I mean, that would be the 19th you're talking about.
Talking about February 2nd.
Oh, February. Okay. Groundhog Day.
We'll see if we have shadows.
Just saying.
I think I'm going to be out of town then, but, there will always be somebody.
Okay, thanks. All right, so then we'll have the evening of the 2nd, and more details to follow. Mr. Erdahl, Administrator's Report.
Thank you, President White and managers. I just have kind of, since we just met last week, just have a kind of few updates. One is, and I'm reiterating kind of the kudos to our staff, Becky, and also the others who facilitated sub-watershed meetings. Those have been really engaging and engaged groups. So that's been, and thank you to the managers who have participated in those too. That's I think it's great to have your participation, both for the community participants and also for staff, to have you involved in those discussions at that level has been a great asset. James mentioned briefly that he presented at the Carver County Board meeting, and President White also did. And the purpose of that was really to kind of reintroduce them again to our planning projects and our potential programs that we'd like to do in the 6 Mile Creek sub-watershed, 6 Mile Halsted Bay sub-watershed, starting in the coming years. And also really to kind of open that conversation for financing options, both kind of short-term on the district side and also kind of longer-term from the Carver County, looking at a similar relationship or in a different context to what we've done with Hennepin County. So Mr. Whisker did a great job introducing that topic, and we had some good questions and also some very positive comments from the Carver County Commissioners in terms of the value that we've provided to different projects and the value of government units working in a real collaborative fashion. So I thought that was a real positive outcome. I also attended the CAC meeting last night, which went pretty late. They had a lot to talk about, and they're really looking forward to defining kind of their focus going forward, and have a strong desire to have that match with kind of what the Board of Managers would like them to be focused on. So, and I don't know if that's rises to the level of a retreat topic on a brief level or something, but I think that they are looking for direction because they want to make sure they're contributing to the overall direction that the district's going, and so they're looking for from both staff and from the board for some of that direction. And then just a note that I'm actually going to be attending a Minneapolis Resilience agenda setting workshop on Monday that I believe Manager Blixt is part of her day job, has been putting together that project and program.
Part of the planning.
So I'm looking forward to kind of looking at the city of Minneapolis' approach to kind of the resilience issues in their planning. So that will be on Monday.
All right. Meeting is adjourned.